This is crazy. I can see my whole audience from here. I'm joking. Please don't unsubscribe. Okay, hi there, Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's do a thought experiment. I want you to think about the last time you watched a movie or show or anything where you had two dudes having a conversation about something other than a girl. For me, I just watched an episode of a show called Skate the Infinity, which is about bros, just dudes being bros and talking about skateboarding. And it's full of that, not even hard for me, and probably not that hard for you to think of one either. But if I reverse the question and ask you to name the last thing you watched with two women having a conversation about something other than a man, that might be a little bit more difficult. Honestly, it's kind of rare for that to happen in content that isn't explicitly a women's thing, like, I don't know, the movie Bridesmaids, for example. It's actually so rare that there is a name for the hypothetical that I just posed a little while ago. It's called the Bechdel Test. The Bechdel Test was coined by a cartoonist named Alison Bechdel back in 1985 when she drew a strip about two women who refused to go to a movie unless it contained at least one scene where two women have a conversation about something other than a man within the movie at some point. And since then, it's become kind of a barometer to measure films by. Now, obviously, this is not intended to be like a one-size-fits-all conclusive test for whether or not a movie has good or bad female characters. In fact, to even suggest that you could come up with a conclusive test that is this simple would be very reductive when you're talking about literally half the human population. But what the Bechdel test is effective for is to be used as a lens through which you can view overall trends in media and see how rare it actually is for women to be written independently of men and therefore fully realized as human beings in their own right. A lot of great films don't pass the Bechdel test, like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, but the point here is not to shame those things or shame anyone who likes them. We're trying not to be reductive here. So with that background in mind, let's return back to the topic of the video, which is Jujutsu Kaisen. It's easy to see why the show has become so popular. It's got a great cast of characters, it's got sleek but very easily recognizable character designs, and absolutely incredible action and animation. It feels like the classic shonen formula, the Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, Hero Academia formula, done about as well as it can be done. Not to say that those other shows are not good as well, but one thing that sets Jujutsu Kaisen apart even among some of the greats in the genre is the way it portrays its women. And keep in mind, in the context of most of these shows, we are still in the infancy of Jujutsu Kaisen. But what does Jujutsu Kaisen have to do with the Bechdel test that I was talking about earlier? I mean, the Bechdel test is for film, right? It doesn't really apply to TV the same way because TV by its very nature has much more screen time to work with. So the bar of a single conversation between two women is even lower than it is in film. But like I said, it's really not about the specifics of whether something passes or fails. It's more about the spirit of the test, the spirit of independence, and the perspective that it can grant us when we see how many things don't even have that one single conversation. And by the way, for anyone wondering, it is actually important for us to have fully realized and well-rounded female characters in our stories because we want our characters to be good. We want to bring the maximum number of perspectives to the table in a way that feels authentic. And you can't have authenticity if half of the human population is tied to the other half in the vast majority of stories. But given that we are talking about shonen anime, the most stereotypically dragged out long-form story, it doesn't make sense to use the same criteria that the Bechdel test uses. But again, we can use the perspective that it grants and maybe adjust the criteria a little bit to better match the medium that we're talking about now. So with that in mind, I have three criteria that I think characterize the problem that most shonen have with depicting women. Number one, kind of similar to the Bechdel test, underrepresentation. This is especially common in a lot of the older shows. Two of my favorite shonen are JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Hunter x Hunter. Both are on the older side if you're looking at the manga at least, and you can see that neither one of them really has that much representation for women. To be fair, the women who do show up are usually pretty well written because, hot take, Araki and Togashi, pretty good writers. Considering their length though, it is a little bit odd that there aren't more of them. Once again, this is not a personal attack. This is not cancel culture or whatever other buzzword you want to throw at me. I'm just trying to have a discussion, okay? Okay, so let's move on to the second issue, which I would just put under the umbrella of bad characterization. You'll see a lot of anime where the women just have this kind of obnoxious and unnecessarily aggro personality that's just copy pasted. And outside of being obnoxious and aggro, they don't really have many personality traits or goals or like much of a life that is independent of whatever man is in their life. Let's just say it, I'm talking about Naruto, okay? Literally every girl in Naruto has this issue. All of them. The only one who has a slightly different personality is Hinata, and her whole personality is just Naruto-kun, Naruto-kun. But even she has the same issue with her whole life essentially being tied to whatever dude is of most relevance to her. Just because of the sheer number of episodes, it would pass the Bechdel test. But again, the spirit of the Bechdel test, hell no. If you had to come up with like a poster boy for poorly written women in anime, probably Naruto. Probably Naruto. The third issue here is being prevented from important contributions to the story. My favorite out of all the new gen shonen is definitely My Hero Academia, but My Hero Academia 100% falls into this problem. There are plenty of girls in Hero Academia. It doesn't have underrepresentation issues. And as far as portraying personalities and goals goes, it's actually pretty well rounded. It's actually kind of a step in the right direction. But you will notice that repeatedly throughout the series, whenever the story kicks in and it's time for ass kicking, the girls get shafted. Like they just don't get to do as much ass kicking. In season 4 of Hero Academia, the overhaul raid was so transparent about this. Can anyone tell me why Nejire Hado is in the big 3? Like what does she do? What does she do? Sun Eater and Lemillion get some badass moments. They get the spotlight. Kirishima gets badass moments. He gets the spotlight. What do the girls get to do? Next to nothing. And then they get relegated to a literal beauty contest in the arc after that. That's kind of cringe, bro. I'm sorry. I love you, but that's kind of cringe. Jujutsu Kaisen avoids all those issues. There's a healthy amount of representation of women in the series. They have different personalities. They have different goals. Miku does not feel like Nobara, who does not feel like Maki, who does not feel like Mai. And Nobara does have a little bit of that classic obnoxious and unnecessarily aggro aspect to her personality, but it's more grounded in its portrayal of that personality type, and it has more diversity, so it doesn't feel overbearing in the context of the show as a whole. We've got Miku out here who just wants money. We've got Maki and Mai who've got an honest-to-God sibling rivalry going. And then you have Nobara and Momo. And their fight in episode 17 is, in a nutshell, why Jujutsu Kaisen is doing so well in this regard. It isn't just a great fight on a mechanical level, it also goes a step beyond and serves as a vehicle for the conflict between two ideologies. During their fight, Momo talks about the societal pressure of being a woman and essentially being expected to be perfect, needing to conform to these unrealistic standards for both capability and beauty constantly, just having the weight of femininity constantly on your head. And then you have Nobara, who is bullishly rejecting gender norms and standards altogether and is determined to stay true to herself. She's secure in the knowledge that her femininity is not dependent on any external source. It means whatever she wants it to mean. And the thing is, from a real-world perspective, both of their ideologies are valid. The need to conform to what society expects from you, even when it's unreasonable, weighs on all of us in one way or another at various times, and to an extent everyone caves to it. No one is completely disregarding societal expectations, and obviously the whole screw everybody else, be true to yourself idea is what we all want, right? That's true liberation, being true to yourself regardless of what the norms of society dictate. And so you have these pretty grounded perspectives being placed in the shonen framework of believe in yourself and be true to yourself versus being jaded and like, the world sucks and I have to be the way the world wants me to be. And obviously because it's shonen, the one who's saying be true to yourself is going to win. But it's the context that makes it feel fresh. Ironically enough, the fact that it is this classic shonen style conflict, just like we've seen with the roles reversed a million times, that in itself feels like a step forward. The only similar thing I could think of is like Sakura versus Ino in the Chunin exams in Naruto, but that was the consensus worst part of that arc. It was a drag. It was holding us back from all the cool shit that came before and after it. And now we've gotten to a point where it might have been genuinely the best part of the arc, for me at least, because it combines surface level hype and badassery with an interesting ideological conflict that isn't necessarily the deepest thing in the world, but it's doing it right and it's doing it with heart, and I am so here for that. So to conclude, Jujutsu Kaisen, great female characters, and also use the Bechdel test as a way to give yourself perspective on the overall trends of popular media and how rare it really is for us to see like great, fully well-rounded female characters in these kinds of shows and movies. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, feel free to do all the YouTuber stuff, like, comment, sub. If not, no hard feelings. I know I'm not that great at this. But have a great day. I'll see you next time.